So this entire thing is basically nothing but a variable now. Um, just to repeat, so you have this jar here, jar matlab ek dabba basically, which contains a value of 72, and you've given a name to this jar called age. This entire thing is nothing but a variable. Now, what happens is as soon as you give a value to a variable like this, you can do all of these things. You can actually recall it, or you can use it, or you can change the value also later on. Right? Now, that is how you actually do it. Like, for example, let's say कि मैं यहाँ पर आता हूँ, and I'll say कि the way you actually declare a variable, you have three ways, but I'm going to talk about the first very commonly used way. Okay. Now, the first commonly used way is using this keyword called let. Okay. Let is a keyword using which you can actually uh, create variables. Okay. Now, let's say I want to create a variable for this age thing. So all I'll do is let age is equal to 72. And I end the line with a semicolon. Now, JavaScript, whenever you add a semicolon, it defines that this is the end of the line. Like ये एक line है, ये एक statement है, जिसका end इस semicolon से हम लोग JavaScript में बताते हैं, ठीक है? Now, let is basically a keyword that is used to declare a variable called age, and its variable का value. What is the value of this variable? 72. Now, once you have declared this variable called age, I can recall it. I'll just say age. And if I hit enter, मुझे उस age का value मिलता है. And if I want, I can use it also anywhere I want. Let's say कि मुझे uh, I want to add like 10 more years to the existing age. I can do age plus 10 and I get 82. Or I can do age minus 10. I get 62. Right? And this is how I can use the age. Like let's say कि अगर I have a parent's age, which is maybe 55, and I can say child age will be the parent age minus maybe 30 or something like this. And now if I do child age, I get the value of the child age, but the parent's age is still the same. Okay, like this. This is how you create a variable. Okay, this is how you create and recall a variable. This is how we use a variable as well. Okay, this is how we use a variable. Now, before going ahead, I want to talk about the naming convention. Like, so what kind of names can you give to the variable? अभी parents age जो है वो एक variable name है. Child age जो है वो भी एक variable name है. The question I'm asking is what are the naming convention? Naming convention का मतलब है what are the rules that you want to follow? Remember that you can't name your variable anything you want. Like for example, every programming language has a set of reserved keywords. Okay, like for example, in Java, int and float, all of these are reserved keywords, which means you cannot create a variable using those reserved keywords, right? The variable name can't be the reserved keyword. Like Java, you can't do int float is equal to. It won't work because float is the reserved keyword. In a similar way, JavaScript you cannot use reserved keywords as the variable names. Now, one of the reserved keywords is a keyword called let. Let is used to create a variable, right? No. If you give the same name as the variable name, if you give let as a variable name, this will not be possible because let is disallowed. So you get an error basically. Okay, which means you cannot create a variable called let. Okay, using let you can create a variable, but a variable name cannot be a reserved keyword. Now, one more big difference between JavaScript and other programming languages is if you look at programming languages like Java or C++ or C, Objective-C, all of these things, there you have, they're all called a strongly typed language or tightly typed language because there every variable has a predefined type. Like let's say if you want to create a number in Java, you will do int. Okay, if you want to create a decimal in Java, you will do decimal, you'll do float. Now, similarly, you have a type for every variable that you create, which means when you run a Java program, the compiler knows beforehand कि ठीक है, this is an int variable. Yeah, this is a character. Yeah, this is a string. Yeah, this is a float variable. The compiler knows that beforehand. Like in JavaScript is not a not a strongly typed language. Okay, JavaScript is actually a dynamically typed language. What that means is you will never give a type of a variable in JavaScript. You only declare variables using let. Like you said, let a is equal to 10. Okay. Now a can actually be anything. See, I've not specified that a is a type of number here. I've only said let a is equal to 10. That is how you declare a variable in JavaScript. You never you never give a type. Okay. JavaScript doesn't have types like other programming languages like Java and C++ and C. In JavaScript, you directly declare a variable using let. Let a is equal to 10, or let age is equal to 100, or let number of laps is equal to 10. Okay, this is how you declare variables in JavaScript. You do not give a type. Basically, there are no types in JavaScript. Okay. Now the next thing is like one more reserved keyword in JavaScript is let document. Document is also a reserved keyword. Okay, because document, like you guys already know, we have done this thing, right? The document dot query selector. Okay, which means there is actually a variable called document. There is an object called document in JavaScript. Okay, basically, I'm sorry, yeah. So I've not
Hello,
spoken about. Yeah, go on.
sir. We can just only store a number only.
No. So I'll be talking about other types also. Like for now, I'm only focused on numbers, but we can store
Okay.
many different things in variables. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I was saying that wait a minute. Now, yeah, so document is also one more reserved keyword. That's why we cannot use document also. Now the next thing is next important thing I want to talk about with respect to naming is, see, whenever you create, let's say I want to store um, the number of games I have in my home. Okay, if I just create a variable called x is equal to 10, and if I say I have 10 games, but this variable name called x is not very descriptive, right? Like मुझे वो x देख के मुझे पता नहीं कि ये x है क्या? Is it x number of games or number of levels or what? I'm not really sure. So always make sure that your variable names are descriptive. Your variable names, that tell you what should be what is the content of that value. Okay, basically your variable name should be descriptive. Like for example, if you want to store number of games, I'll be like let number of games is equal to 10. So this is much more clear, right? Like what this value of 10 is. One more thing is, let's talk about there are different cases. Okay, there are different cases of a variable name. I'll tell you variable cases. There should be an image. I'm just trying to find it. Case, camel case. Okay, I think should be a good example. Yeah, I think this is a good example. So let me talk about. Let me open this up. Basically, whenever you're trying to create a variable name, you can actually use like many of these types. Okay, the most common types are the first three. We have this thing called a snake case, where all letters are always in lowercase, and you separate the words using an underscore. Okay, this is very common in JavaScript. The other thing is called Pascal case, where every word ka starting letter is actually it's capitalized. Okay, but this is not very commonly used. Okay, this is commonly used, but not this. But camel case is actually like very commonly used in JavaScript. Like this is your go-to. Okay, like a camel case is something which people use a lot to create their variables in JavaScript. So let's go ahead and create a camel case variable. So I've already created a camel case variable here. Okay, let's create one more. Let's say ki let number of children in a class or something. Okay, this is a camel case because camel case ka words, they start with a small letter, but then after the first word, every other word, it starts with a capitalized letter. Okay, now one example of a snake case is this: number of children. See, this is also correct, and this also works. Okay, JavaScript by default doesn't have any rules. Like, जिन्होंने भी JavaScript language बनाया है, they did not enforce any rules. Like यही use करना है, यही use करना है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. But the thing is, the JavaScript community जो है, like all the developers who work in JavaScript, they have collectively decided that okay, let's use camel case for most of our stuff, and that is called a convention. You'll be hearing this word called convention very often. What does convention even mean? So convention का मतलब है किसी, let's say कि एक community है. Okay, let's say कि इंडिया में there is a community of Royal Enfield bikers, right? तो there is no such rule by the government कि जब भी ये लोग लेह लद्दाख जाते हैं, they have to wear a black color या brown color jacket and heavy shoes and go. ऐसा कुछ rule नहीं है ना. लेकिन all the people who own a Royal Enfield, they have collectively made a decision ki we'll always ride our bike like this in Leh Ladakh. That is a convention they follow. Okay, that's not a rule by the Royal Enfield people or something, but all the people who use the bike, they have come up with the convention, or they've come up with a set of rules that they want to follow, even if those rules are not very strict rules. Now, similarly, we have many conventions in every programming language. Like one convention, I'm sorry. Yeah, like one convention in JavaScript programming language is to use the camel case for naming of your variables. Okay, so just remember, this is a camel case, this is a snake case. Always go ahead with the camel case, even though both will work. Always go ahead with the camel case because that is the convention. Okay. Now, one more thing is, see, once you, let's say you create let age is equal to 10, and then if I directly do let age is equal to 20, this will not work. Okay? Because see, once you have declared a variable using age like this, you cannot redeclare the same variable. You cannot redeclare. Remember, I'll do the same thing. Let's say ki let children in a family is equal to maybe 4. But if I do the same thing again, if I just copy and paste it, and if I do like 10, this will not work because I've already declared a variable called children in family. I cannot redeclare. Okay, but what I can do is I can change the value of the variables. Okay, the way I can change it is, by the way, before that, let's just go ahead with this. We'll go with the slides. Okay, now look at this. Basically, this is the basic syntax of creating any variable in JavaScript. You start with this reserved keyword called let, and then you give some name to the variable, and you give is equal to the value. Whatever value you want to give, you can give the value to the variable. Now, till now, we have only discussed about numbers, I know, but you can give multiple types of values to the variables, which we will look into a little bit later. But remember that this is the basic syntax of creating any variable. Let variable name is equal to the value. Okay, guys, any questions so far? Okay, great. Now let's proceed. Now this is one example. Let age equal 55. Now what we're doing is we're creating a variable called age and we're giving it a value of 55. इसका मतलब है कि there is a variable called age which is which is stored in the JavaScript का memory which has a value of 55. So age का variable, there's a variable called age जिसका value 55. Okay, that is the variable. So this is how you recall the variables. Recall का मतलब है कि like let's say let hence is equal to 4 and let roosters is equal to 10 and we'll do hence plus roosters. Okay, now you can actually use the variables instead of doing 4 plus 10, which basically has no meaning to it. I can do hence plus roosters, which basically is this variable ka value is 4 and this variable's value is 10. And we're adding both of these variables. Now, if you go further, we can also update the values. Now, let's look at this example. So let's say ki that hence is equal to 10. Now I want to actually reduce the hence value. I want to reduce it by 1. So I'll do hence minus 1. I get back 9. But when I try to print out the value of hence, it's again 10. Why is it 10 but I reduced 1 here, no? The reason is, see, I've just reduced what I'm doing here is hence minus 1. When I'm doing hence minus 1, all I'm doing is I'm doing 10 minus 1. But iska value jo hai, I'm not storing it in anywhere again. I'm not storing it in any other variable. So if I want to update the existing variable, I have to do hence is equal to hence minus 1. This time when I print out hence, I get 9. Okay. See, I've declared a variable called hence is equal to 10. Now I'm saying abhi hence ka value मैं update कर रहा हूं. I'm saying hence minus 1. One more example. Let's say I have that fruits is equal to 100 and I want to like reduce some 10 of the fruits. So it'll be like fruits is equal to fruits minus 10. I get 90 and if I print out, I'll get 90 again. One more example. Let's say I have let numbers is equal to 98. Now I just want to change the numbers ka value to 10. I have to just do numbers is equal to 10. Now when I print out numbers, I get value of 10. तो पहले यहाँ पर numbers was 98. यहाँ पर मैंने update किया है numbers variable को. That's what I get. The value of numbers to 10. Okay, this is called updating a variable. Now, now apart from let, okay, we have one more way of updating. We have one more way of creating a variable in JavaScript. Okay, what is that way? Now, so far we have created all our variables using the keyword called let, which allows us to update the variable as well. But let's say you want to create a constant variable. We can use a keyword called const. Like let's say const pi is equal to 3.14. Now I cannot ever change the value of pi. I cannot change the value of pi now. If I try to do pi is equal to 4.5, this will not work. ये error देगा मुझे. And the value of pi is still 3.14. It is not changed because if I create a variable using using the keyword called const, it means it's a constant variable, which means the value of this variable will actually not change. It will always remain the same. One more example is, let's say const highest marks will be 100. And if I try to change the highest marks is equal to highest marks plus 10, this is not possible because I cannot change the value of a constant variable. And if I try to print out the highest marks, it will still be 100. Okay, so the second way of creating uh, a variable is by using const. Whenever you want to create a variable which will never change, okay, अगर एक वेरिएबल ऐसा है कि उसका वैल्यू कभी चेंज नहीं होगा, then just create that variable using this keyword called const. Okay, that is the second way of doing things. Now, why would you use const for this example? Let's say, whenever you have a particular variable which you know will actually never change. Like, for example, we know that the value of pi is always 3.14159. You know that there are 7 days in a week. You know, this value never changes. And let's say you're creating a variable for a particular ride at a water at a water. You guys must have heard of Wonderla or things like that. So there are certain rides which have a minimum height criteria, right? In that case, if you want to set a minimum height for that ride, you can have it here. Or you can say you can even create, like, let's say const min age for drinking. Okay, like this. Okay, this can never be changed. If I try to change it now, if I try to change it maybe to 18, this will not work because I've already created a variable called min age for drinking using const, which means I've created a constant variable and I would be able to change this value again. Okay, that's a constant variable. There are two ways of creating a variable, guys. One is like this, one is using let, one is using the let variable, and second is using the so the first way is using the let keyword, and second way is using the const keyword. Okay. Now, before we move on, one second. I think these are okay. Huh. Before we move on, there is actually a very old way of creating the variables as well, and that way is actually called var. Now, like I said, see, मैंने बहुत beginning में आप लोगों को बताया था कि there are three ways of creating a variable in JavaScript. The first way is let, the second way is const. Now, these both are the modern or the new ways of creating variables in JavaScript. लेकिन जब JavaScript जब create हुआ था, and if you guys remember, I spoke about ES6 2015, ES 2015 में बहुत सारे नए changes आए थे ना, तो उन्हीं changes में से ये दोनों भी आए थे, let और const जो है वो उन्हीं changes में आए थे. इसका मतलब है कि 2015 तक ये let और const available नहीं थे. तो उसके पहले, if we wanted to create variables, the way to create a variable was using this keyword called var. var का मतलब है variable. Now I can create a variable using var, and I can say let height is equal to maybe 100. Okay, which means I can actually create a variable using var as well. Now the big difference between var and let, see, we already know what is the difference between const, right? Like const एक ऐसा variable है जो आप कभी change नहीं कर पाते. लेकिन var और let are very similar. I can change the var का value like this. Okay, I can keep changing it however I want. Okay, I can do this, which means I can update the value of a var variable. Here's 1 second. So we're saying that I'm sorry, guys. got distracted. Saying that we can change the value of a var variable, but you cannot change the value of a const variable. Now, so what was I talking about is so what is the difference between var and let though? Let and var may the main difference is var may you can redeclare. Uh, so let's say if I do this, let a is equal to 100. This will be a problem, right? Lekin this won't be a problem with var. Let's say var height is equal to 100 and var height is equal to 10. This will not give problem at all. The value will be of 10. जो भी last हमने declare किया था वही value होगा. So this is one big difference between var and let. Now there are other differences also, but we'll get to that a little bit later once we start learning about functions. Okay, that's when we'll see more differences between var and let. But just remember that var is a very old way of creating a variable, which is not which you guys should never use going forward. Okay, never use var because there's no value, there's no real benefit of using var now. You can always create a variable using a const. The way you should think about this is see, uh, just create a variable using const first. Like, if you know that the value variable might change, then go for let. They can never go for var. Okay, so always go with a let or const, but not var. Okay, guys. So yes, any questions so far? Okay, cool. So let's proceed with the next topic. So okay, now let's go to some quiz time. Okay, I want you guys to answer these questions. What is the value of egg count? Egg count का value क्या है? Egg count is a variable. Okay, Mahesh is saying 44. Okay, so all of you guys are wrong. All of you are wrong. See, I spoke about this very beginning. Just observe what is happening there. Am I really increasing the value of egg count? So yeah, so it's still 42. Yatin is right. So I'll tell you what is happening. See, we had discussed about this before. So the question is what? Let egg count is equal to 42, right? Okay. Let egg count is equal to 42. Now, when I do egg count plus 2, see, it does return 44. Okay, because the egg count plus 2 mein kya ho raha hai? It's taking 42, it's adding the 2, it's returning that value. But am I storing this back anywhere? I'm not storing it anywhere, right? So इसका मतलब है कि the egg count का value will never change. अगर मुझे egg count का value change करना है, then I have to do egg count is equal to egg count plus 2. Then if I do egg count, then the value will change. Got it, guys? Okay. Now next, what is the value of rating after this code runs? Perfect, guys. You understood this very well. See, because this is a variable that we created using the const keyword, which means we can never change a const variable, right? Okay, you guys are right about that. Now, next, what's the value of? Okay, we didn't talk about this yet, so let's actually talk about. Yeah, let's talk about this a little bit later. But before that, okay. Now we're going to talk about some topics now. Before we move on to that question. Now there are different types of operators that we're going to talk about. Okay. Now the first operator I want to talk about is this thing called unary operator. Unary operator. Okay, now this is what I'm going to talk about first. It's very simple. See, unary operator are okay. Before we go ahead, the way it works is okay. Wait, I need to change this. Now see, let's say I have a variable called score is equal to 0. Now if I want to add 1 to the score, मुझे इसको 1 से increment करना है. The way I can do it is score is equal to score plus 1, right? Okay, but there is one more way I can actually there is a shortcut way of doing the same thing, and that is using a unary operator. And the way we do that is we say score is equal to score plus is equal to 1. What this means is score is equal to score plus 1. Okay, that is what this thing means. Let's talk about this in detail now. So we have this let score is equal to 0. And then when we do score is equal to score plus 1. Okay, when we do this, the shortcut for this is basically we do score plus is equal to 1. What this means is these both are exactly the same. Okay, this is just a shortcut for the above thing. So all we're saying is score is equal to score plus 1. And you guys tell me if you want the same thing for, let's say, that mangoes is equal to 20. And I want to add like 10 more mangoes, but I want to do that using unary operator. How can I do it? I want to add like 10 more. Rajendra and Shraddha, both of you guys are right. Very good, Mahesh. Basically, we do mangoes. So the first way is obviously we do mangoes plus 10. This is one way. But the other way is we can just do mangoes plus is equal to 10. Because these both are exactly the same. There's no difference at all. Okay. Now, if we can do the same, if we can do with plus, we can do the same thing with minus, and we can do it with every other arithmetic operation. We can do it for subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulo as well. Okay. For example, let's say again, let's score is equal to 0. And if I want to multiply the score by 10, the old way of, one way of doing it is score into 10. Okay, this is one way of doing it. But the other way, using a ternary operator, is doing like this. Both are the same thing, right? Now let's say I want to again subtract. That score is equal to 20. And if I want to subtract 5 from it, one way is this. And using the unary operator, it is this. Okay. Now you guys tell me if you want to subtract 100. Okay. I want to subtract, I want to divide this by 5. How do you do it using unary operators? Subtract score by 5 using unary operator. How can I do this, guys? Rajendra is correct. All you have to do is just do score by 5. That's it. Okay. This is nothing but a unary operator. Now, if you, there's one more thing, one last thing. Let's say I have let mangoes is equal to 100 and let apples is equal to 10. Now, if I want to multiply these both, okay, if I actually want to do let mangoes is equal to not let mangoes into or plus apples, okay. Now, how do I do the same thing using a unary operator, guys? Same thing. How do I do it using a unary operator? That's it. Mangoes plus is equal to apples. Okay, this is a unary operator. That is well done. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is you have this increment and decrement operators also, uh, which is very, very common. Like let's say, so if you have a counter is equal to 1. Now, if I just want to increment this by 1 or decrement by 1, I have two very nice shortcuts. I can just do counter plus plus. When I do this, and if I try to print the value of counter, along with the value of 2. Okay. When I do counter plus plus का मतलब है, if I do counter plus plus, it just means counter plus 1. And if I do the counter minus minus, it just means counter minus 1. Okay, that is all it means. Very simple. So let's say if I have the score is equal to 100, and if I want to decrease it by 1, मुझे सिर्फ 1 से decrease करना, I have to just do score minus minus. And when I print out score, I get 99. But if you observe one thing, see when I do score minus minus, first it is returning 100. लेकिन बाद में when I check the score, it's returning the correct value. That is because this is a post increment operator. There are two kinds of operators. There is a pre-increment and a post increment. There is a pre-decrement and post decrement. And what I'm trying to say is, see, let's say we have a counter of 10. Okay. Now, if I do a plus plus of counter, it will immediately change the value and return it, and the value also will change. This is a pre-increment. Okay. But if I do, let's say, counter is equal to 10, and if I do a post increment like this, it immediately does not return the incremented value. But later on, when I check the value of counter, it will be incremented by 1. Same thing applies to decrement also. But guys, remember one thing, you don't have to think a lot about this, because honestly, if I am in your place, I would not use this that much, because this can be a little confusing as well. So don't use it that much if you don't want to. Like if you can just do the counter plus is equal to 1. This is a much easier solution and very easy to understand and read also. Okay. That was about the post increment and pre-increment. Now, based on that knowledge, I want you guys to solve this question. First of all, what is the value of wind speed? Rajinder says 81, Yatin says 80. Okay, what about the others? Shraddha, what do you think? Shraddha and Mahesh. 81. Okay. Let's see what the value is. Okay, so I'll type the exact same code. Let wind underscore speed is equal to 76. And if I do wind speed plus equal to 5 plus is equal to 5. And if I do wind speed minus minus. So if I just do wind speed, value is actually 80. So I'll tell you what's happening here. Okay. So wind speed is 76 initially. Okay. I'm adding the value of 5 to it. This will happen instantly, right? So wind speed plus is equal to 5 will become 81. 81 ke baad I'm doing a decrement of 1. Value will be 80. Very simple. There's no difference at all here. There's nothing difficult here. But if you want, I'll just go in detail here. Okay, let's talk about this now. See, so initially the value is 76. Now, yeah, at this stage the value is 76. After this, we are doing 76 plus 5 यहाँ पर. 76 plus 5, which means the value is what? The value is 81. यहाँ पर we do 81 minus minus, which means 81 minus 1. Value will be 80. That's it, Rajendra. So first we're incrementing it by 5, then decrementing it by 1. That's it. But guys, what do you think is the minor issue with this code? Minor problem with this code? Observe it properly. What is the minor issue with this code, guys? It's very easy. That's not an issue, Shraddha. Look at, okay, I'll give you guys an example. Look at the variable name. Do you guys think there's something, what is wrong with the variable name, Yatin? No, that's not the.
फिर से मतलब वेरिएबल नेम लिखना पड़ता है फिर से.
नहीं. वो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. See, Mahesh is correct. So basically, it's the issue with the case. मैंने बताया था आप लोगों की. See, this is we call this a snake case. Now, snake case is not really preferred. It's not a convention. The convention is to use a camel case. इसका मतलब है कि if you wanted to use a wind speed as the variable name, this is not the right way to do it. Okay, the right way of doing things is wind speed, like this. This is the correct case of the variable. See, it will not break the app or something. It still works. जैसे हम बताया कि JavaScript तो doesn't have any rules like that. लेकिन ये community जो है, all the developers, they have decided collectively कि it's better we use the camel case, and this is the camel case right here. Okay, so don't forget this, guys. Okay, all right, so we are done with variables. We're done with, like how we can update the variables, how we can use variables, how we can increment, decrement the variables, and what are variables, and what are different types of declaring the variables. All of these things is done. We have 10 more minutes. So I'm going to cover a very simple topic. It's called Booleans. Now, if you guys remember, when I spoke about the primitive types earlier, okay, we have different primitive types here. The first one we have already covered, which is a number. Okay, we'll get to string after this, but first let's talk about the Boolean thing. Okay, what is a Boolean? If you guys remember, I give an example here. We have a checkbox here. Okay, whenever you check the checkbox, it's a true value, which means you are truly agreeing to the terms. But if you do not check it, it means it's a false value. And that is all there is to Boolean. Boolean का मतलब बस उतना ही है. It's either a true or a false value. There's nothing else. Okay. Now they're also very efficient with respect to how much space they take, because they have only two options. Now the numbers where you can add anything you want. Like in a Boolean variable always takes in either a true value or a false value. That's it. And also this Boolean is a very important topic, because in the future, after some topics, when we start talking about logic now, logic में ये Boolean बहुत use होता है, like extremely crucial. Okay, so understand what Boolean actually is. Now let's talk about Booleans now. Okay, first, okay, Booleans are very simply, like I told you, it's either a true or a false value, which means every time you create a Boolean variable, it has to be either a true value or a false value. It cannot be anything else. Okay, remember that it's always either a true value or a false value. Let's create some variables. Like for example, let's say is India Is India an Asian? Is India in Asia? This is a true value, right? Which means now this variable called is India in Asia, it has a value of true. Now, when I try to print this back, is India in Asia? Sorry, when I try to print this variable here, I get a value back as true. What is that? Oh, let's say you're playing a game. Game started. So initially it will be a value of false. जब आपने game शुरू नहीं किया है, the value is false because the game शुरू नहीं हुआ है. Now when I try to print it out, I get a value of false, but I can later change it to a value of true also when I want. जब game शुरू होता है, then the value becomes a true value. Let's create one more variable called game over. Initially it will be false, but once you finish the game, it will have value of true. Now when I type game over, it will have a value of true. Okay. Boolean variables always have either a true value or a false value. It can't be anything else. That's why it's called a Boolean variable. Now, one more very common convention, okay, which people use to name their Boolean variables is by is by prefixing their variables with is. Like let's say if you want to check if a user is logged into your website or not, you can create a variable called is logged in. Okay, now is logged in, it can either be true or false, right? And hence you can check what the value is. Now similarly, you can say const is water wet. True. When you do is water wet, value of true. Okay, that is all there is to Boolean variables. Nothing else, honestly. Okay. Yeah, one more thing is, see, so far we have basically we've spoken about two kinds of values, right? We have spoken about numbers, spoken about Booleans also. Okay, we've spoken about two types of values now. Now let's say I have this variable called a is equal to 10. Okay. Now JavaScript, like I told you, because JavaScript is not a strongly typed language, JavaScript is actually a dynamically or loosely typed language, which means the variables do not have a type. Okay, which means JavaScript does not care whether your variable is a number or a Boolean or a string or whatever, which means you can change the type of a variable on the fly. Like for example, this is let a equal to 10. I can now say a is equal to true. There's nothing stopping us from doing this. JavaScript will not throw any error because, like I said, JavaScript doesn't care what the type of the variable is. Okay. Now, if I print the value of a, it will be true, but I can again change it back to some number like this, maybe 987.654. Now, when I print out the value of a again, I get 987.6.4. Okay. See, initially the variable it had a value of number, and then we changed it to a Boolean, then number again, which means you can add any type to it. You can, like when you reassign a variable, you can reassign it to a different value. Doesn't have to always be the same value which you initially started. Okay. Lekin, see, even if this is possible, you should not do it within your code because it can be very confusing, right? Like let's say agar you'll say const is not const is game over. तो आप पहले false लगाओगे, and then after some time if you go and add a value of 100 here, it doesn't make any sense, right? I mean the other developer who will come and work along with you, उसको समझ में नहीं आएगा कि why is this thing called, like पहले Boolean value था, why is it now a number? Doesn't make any sense, right? So even though this is possible, ये possible है, it will not throw in errors, but don't do it within your code unless absolutely required. Only if required, then do it, but just avoid this altogether. Okay, but remember, it is possible. Oh, yaad rakhna bas. Okay. Now that was about Boolean values, guys. So any questions on this? Any questions on anything we discussed about today?
हेलो सर।
हाँ,
सर ये लेट जो फंक्शन है वो हमने बाद में इस गेम ओवर इक्वल टू 100 है ना, उसको क्यों नहीं लगाया सर? लेट फंक्शन।
हाँ. So basically, see, let is not a function. Let is a keyword. Basically, let is a keyword is to create a variable. Now, the thing is, see, we are creating a variable here. तो एक बार create करने के बाद, why do I have to redeclare? मुझे सिर्फ इस जो भी मैंने यहाँ पर create किया है, मैं उसको बुला के मैं update कर रहा हूँ. So I don't have to do let every single time. मैं let बोल के इस variable के नाम से एक variable जब create कर दूंगा, उसके बाद मुझे let यूज करने का जरूरत है ही नहीं, because you you just are updating the value here. ठीक है? So you don't have to use the let keyword again.
ओके सर।
ठीक है? Okay. So any other questions, guys? Okay, if you guys have no questions, then we will stop the class here and we'll get back to the next class next Thursday. Okay, guys? Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. Take care.